Okay. Yeah. First question, who was here for last year's workshop? Okay, about half not, okay. Who here remembers anything from last year's workshop? Cool, about 25%. That's good because we're going to recover a lot of the same ground as we did last year. The big difference is that I've had another year to digest the system, and also I've started looking at a complementary source called Ghiani, who's from his texts from 1619. For this workshop, it's going to be Rapier and Dagger. So if everybody could get a rapier, or if they don't have a rapier, a side sword is fine. If you don't have a side sword, then a saber is fine. But if everybody could grab one of those, and I'll ask you to do the second thing of the workshop while I'm here chatting away. So hands up everybody that has a sword, with them now, in their hands. Go and get a sword, go get a sword. Sweet.
What do I do with a dagger? I have enough to
go. Your healthy choppy drink will be great. We can use our hands, we can use a buckler. We'll talk about it later. Cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, so second thing is you would have heard one of our Australian friends going on about, or Australian frenemies, going on about the strength and the weakness of a sword. A really, really useful little trick that you can do is you can put a bit of tape there, and that way you have a pair of sights. You're fencing with your opponent, you look down, yep, sweet, I've got a strong, weak interaction, bam. So we're all going to do that, and you'll get something useful out of this workshop. And all you're going to do is you're going to get your sword, don't stab your friend in the head with it. You're going to measure out the length of the blade. We're going to go to the cup hilt, because I'm an arsehole. Fold it in half, measure out that distance, whack your tape on there. It doesn't need to be too exact. Sound good?
Good.
And if you can't do it, find a friend that can. Some for you, some for you. Yeah, taping it now. Because I'm going to be blathering away and it gives you something to do. Yes. The third ask that I've got for this workshop is, at the moment, I'm recovering from a concussion that I got in October. So please bear with me. If I start sounding funny or looking like I'm about to pass out, let me know. Equally, please treat the people that you're playing with respect. We're all here to learn. One of the complementary source I was talking about, Ghiani, talks about cuts in fencing. And he says, well, maybe they're good for soldiers, but they cause an awful lot of disputes in the fencing hall. And really, when we're talking about a fencing system, there's really two things to understand. One is, what equipment were they using? What were the material conditions? Hence the cool suit. And number two is, what was the convention that they were fencing under? What were they trying to achieve in their fencing? And the impression that I get from sort of these late 16th, early 17th century sources is that, yes, they did have cuts in there sometimes, but what they really thought was the aim in fencing was to land a thrust to the torso of the opponent. In fact, Ghiani talks about two different types of assaults, of honorable assaults, let's say. And the first one is, imagine that you're the fencing master at the Tuscan court, and some knight comes up and says that he knows about fencing, and your noble Grand Duke says, all right, show us. Sweet, there he is, he's ready to roll, he's ready to show off his jiu-jitsu, and as the fencing master, you're there to stooge for them. So you're there to make them look good. And if you can land a touch, show that you could, but don't stand them up in front of everybody. The second type of assault and honor that he talks about is when another fencing master comes to town and tries to dojo storm you and is talking shit about your kung fu. I do swear, sorry Mosh. When somebody's busy trying to undermine your authority and you're made to play it out, and it's in front of the court. And what Ghiani says is that First of all, you have seconds. Patroni is what he calls them, which basically means like uncles. And they're there to break apart the fight. If it gets to wrestling, if it gets nasty, they're there to break it up. And then the second thing he says is that all that counts is thrusts to the torso. And then the third thing he says is that all that counts is the first attack and any reply made in that timing. So we're not talking about 6-step after blows. We're not talking about smashing Mike in the back of the head 3 seconds later. I'm sorry. Hypothetically, yes. No matter how sore a loser you are. Yeah. But slash the tires first. But the key thing is that, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve in our fencing. We are trying to land a thrust to the torso of our opponent. You can do other stuff, but it's not as good. Okay, this is all talking about schools, fencing schools. The source that I'm mostly working from is Federico Ghisliero, and this work was published in 1587, and it's got really sexy pictures. This text was first written about in English by the Victorians. They knew that it existed. More recently, HEMA was invented in blah, blah. In 1994, a historian called Sidney Anglo wrote an academic article on this fencing text, talking about the kind of physics involved, the artwork, all this kind of stuff. And he wrote about it again in his 2000 book, The Martial Arts of Renaissance Europe. And what happened with this fencing text after that? Absolutely nothing. It's too hard. Occasionally I ask about, and occasionally people say, oh yeah, I had a friend that looked at that 15 years ago, but then they didn't do anything. What really stood out to me about it is the pretty pictures. And I wanted to know what those pretty pictures meant, especially once the French National Library digitalized them and had them up to see. So a few years ago, I started transcribing it with the help of online tools and translating it. And last year, for the first time, there was a presentation on what the text is about. It was here. In that time, a couple of other people in Australia have started working on it. Their translation's on Wiktionary. It is what it is. But the other thing that really stood out to me is that this guy says in his introduction that he had a guy called Silvio Piccolomini as his teacher. Silvio Piccolomini also taught Capoferro. He also taught Jacopo Monesi. He was also in charge of the Knightly Order of St. Stephen, which were basically Tuscan pirates that went and raided the Ottomans and the Barbary Corsairs. What I've learned in the last couple of years, thanks to a very good Hungarian historian who I'm not even going to try and pronounce, was how Ghisliero was a military commander, an engineer, and how during the long Turkish war in Hungary, he was fighting for the Papal States there. He got injured in battle. When you look at this guy's career, he wrote this book at the start of his career. He'd already been on campaign in Portugal, in Flanders, in the Low Country, in the Rhine, in a campaign there. So then he goes on to Hungary and the Balkans. Then he joins these knights busy raiding around the Mediterranean. He goes and works for the Papal States for a while. He goes and works for Piedmont Savoy, and he writes a book for Charles Emmanuel of Savoy the same year as Gaiani writes his book. So that's where I think there's a connection. It's just a generation different. Gaiani says something very important about teaching fencing, which is quite straightforward to teach the how you do an action. But it's very difficult to teach the when you should do the action. That needs to be intuited, that needs to be learned, you need experience, you need exposure. That you have to practice to do. So today, we're going to focus on the how and why you should do a fencing action. All right, the weapons used. This is a sword. That's a dagger, sorry, that's a sword. That's a sword. And throughout both these fencing books, they just refer to it as a sword, a spada. Not as a rapier, not as a side sword, just its sword. Occasionally there's a little side ring shown on both of them, but normally they're very plain hilts. When this guy loves Aristotle, he loves proportions, he talks about what size your sword should be. And there he agrees with Capoferro in that it should be twice the length of your arm, which is also 2/3 of your height, which for me, I'm 6'1" on Tinder, right? And so by those proportions, I should have a 48-inch rapier blade. No one makes it. Cowards, absolutely. I don't know if it's because of what steel was available to cast steel in like 1992. Yeah, so this is, I think it's a 45-inch. It's shorter than the book says I should be using. Thibaut, however you pronounce it. Thibaut, he's different. He says that your sword should be half the distance from the ground to your outstretched fingers, which for me is still longer than this thing. And Thibaut goes on about how that's the perfect length because, you know, it's more useful and maneuverable and better day to day.
Yeah, a nice short rapier.
Yeah, a nice short rapier like this one, a nice short sword like this one. Yeah. And there's a kind of mentality that, you know, rapiers were a feat. This guy was a career soldier. And his entire fencing system, as we'll find out in a minute, is based on being practical and not taking too long when you just want to hit somebody.
Did you say real and deadly?
It is real. It's the realest and deadliest of fencing systems out there. This guy actually went to war. Yeah. So who am I going to pick on? I'm going to pick on the cool kid dressed as the B-movie. Come up, join us. Join. Yeah. these Gen Zs. Ghisliero had the finest Jesuit education. He's running on the latest thinking at the time. He's actually scholastic. People talk about how I-33 and Lichtenauer is scholastic. It's really not. This is quoting Aristotle chapter and verse in terms of working out stuff. And after about 60 pages of the book, he gets to the actual problem in fencing, which is if you point your sword towards me, there is a shortest line between the two of us. You might have heard this being called the center line before. That's from Kung Fu. He calls it the diameter, just to be a knob. His sword is occupying this line. I can't hit him without being hit first. So, how do I solve this problem? And the first thing that he does is he lists possible solutions. And so one of these is, if the sword's being pointed at you, it's already occupying that space, is that you try and gather the weak, but you know they can disengage. Other things that you can do, you can try and beat their sword. But that act of beating their sword creates a tempo in which they can stab you. Okay, then you can try and beat their sword, and then beat their sword again. And the way that he describes this is it can go on indefinitely. And he's quite scathing about some fencing systems. Some other things that he says that you can do is when they do attack, you can step back and create a tempo, and then go. He does say that what we were doing in Moshe's workshop, pivoting on the spot to cover either side. This one you'll sometimes hear called an incortata, which is a fourther. Ghisliero has cooler names. He calls this one a header. So if their sword's pointing at me, I can step to the right, bring my sword across, and try and void it while I land my touch. Equally, on the other side, rather than doing a header, I can be a hunchback. Gobber is what he calls it. Gobber. I know, mate. It doesn't mean it in British English. And what he says is like, yes, these are effective things, but you know, they're very unnatural, violent motions which are bad for you. And I love Ghisliero because I'm lazy. So what we're going to do as our first exercise, now that everybody's digested a little bit, is find a mask, find a partner, maybe put on a jacket if you're brave enough, and while one person points the sword directly at the opponent, I want you to try and land the point of your sword on the torso of your friend. Have a play, work it out, grab a mask and do it 10 times each using some of those techniques I've just talked about. Okay? Any questions? Sorry? Yeah, scooch the chairs to me, make a little bit of space.
I like when you pointed at Nelson and said, this is the problem in fencing.
Okay, can I have everyone's attention, please? Sweet. Hands up, everybody that managed to place the point of their sword on the opponent's chest. Congratulations, you all have really nice training partners who are being super friendly to you. And I know that we're in t-shirts because it's like 3,000 degrees out here. It isn't here. Thanks. Think about war. The next step is we're not going to be so nice to our training partners. We're still going to be nice-ish. But now, as the defender, when you have the center line, if your opponent starts ducking and diving, just put the point on them. If they start running away to the side, just turn to face them. Give them a genuine challenge to try and overcome. Yep.
May I disengage?
Yes, 1,000%. As the attacker and as the defender.
Christmas.
What we're doing now is that you've had a 5-second introduction of 3 bad approaches, according to Ghisliero. And now we're just going to try and make them work with no further instruction. I'm setting you up to fail. It's mint. So you've got 5 minutes, same training partners, okay? Everybody's attention, please. Hands up, everybody who managed to land a touch on their partner this time. Still a decent number. Hands up, everybody who found it a little bit more challenging. Sweet, I'm sorry, this isn't a karate dojo. Ghisliero's solution to this stems from the fencing problem. The fencing problem stems from the fact that between 2 points on a flat plane, there's only one shortest path, which is what the opponent's sword is busy occupying. So, Ghisliero's approach starts all the way back here. Mosh in his workshop talked about 3 distances. One of them is the distance at which you just can't hit them, or there'll be so many timings before you're in range to hit that it doesn't matter. But this is when you start when you're fencing, when you're fighting. If you start your fencing here, you're robbing each other of half of the game. The next distance is Lager, or wide distance. And that's the distance where, with footwork, you can touch your opponent. What distance that is depends on you, depends on your weapon and everything else. Ghisliero gives us a little shortcut. He says that for you, fencing distance starts at the same distance as your height. Easy. Normally I'd mess around with traffic cones, let me already work it out. I can't really be bothered. But if you think 6 foot away from Sam for me is about this distance, There's no fencing happening here. There's fencing happening here. There's no fencing at all happening over here. When I reach that mark on the ground, I want to be ready to go. How can you be ready to go? Your body's like a compass, or at least your legs are. In order to move a leg, you need to not have your weight going through it to the ground. Mosh will talk endlessly, love you Mosh, about the tempo of lifting a foot and the tempo of a foot falling. What Ghisliero does is he gets to the edge of fencing distance and he has you chill for a beat. If you're right-handed, your right foot up. If you're left-handed, your left foot up. And this is when you take a beat to assess your opponent and what they're up to before you begin fencing, or as you begin fencing. And depending on what they're doing with their sword, you do different stuff. We're going to focus on the most common one, which is the sword being directly extended at your opponent. They're occupying the center line. All my weight's on my back foot, my front foot's in front. I've got a sword here. This is how he wants you to arrive. Now, the second part of how he deals with this problem is a trick. And this is where it being a rapier and dagger workshop comes in. You lean back, you have a look at what they're doing. You start your attack with a lean forwards of the torso, and you can still abort your attack at this point. Lean forward, and with your offhand, you bring that into play. Because you're not 2 points in space, you're a volume in space. You have two shoulders. And as you lean forward, you can square up and bring your offhand into play. And then you can take their sword off the center line. That can be the fencing action. We don't need daggers. If you have a dagger, use the dagger at this point. You can use your offhand. He does say that it changes the footwork just a little bit, but the key thing that I want you to do this time is one person, again, is a very nice dummy and gives you the problem. I want you to start very far away from each other. I want you to walk up to the edge of measure, take a moment on your back foot, begin your lean, and push the blade aside while you thrust. Okay? Any questions? Sweet, same partners. Go. When you're drilling, do it this way up and down the hall so we can use the space more economically, okay? Yeah.
This might spoil your magic trick. How do we step close enough that we can touch with our dagger?
With a lean.
And not, like, die. It's all about the lean?
So it is...
We're just staying back, isn't it? What do we touch? We're not, like, going like, oh, I'm going to touch it.
So what you do is if your sword's on the closest line, as I come in, as I lean, I'm not trying to find it and then do the thing. I'm doing it all at once.
And you're quite square.
Yeah. 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 Everyone's attention. I've given everybody very little instruction at this stage, because I'm useful like that. Lots of people, when they talk about doing sword and buckler or rapier and dagger, their immediate reaction is, oh man, it's a lot of this. It's quite a lot of coordination that's quite difficult to get on top of. And honestly, the best thing that I've found for building up your rapier and dagger coordination is a bouncy ball, and to practice throwing it around left-handed and catching it left-handed. Yeah. And it sounds really dumb, but your body knows what to do, right? Go for a walk, throw a ball around. You can do this as part of your warm-up, as part of your 15 minutes waiting for Adrian Michaud to arrive late to the salle. You have this opportunity to throw a ball around and practice left-handed. Oops. And believe me, I need practice. Okay. How we use our offhand this time is very Aristotelian. You might not know this, but there's like 6 types of motion. 6 types of change, one of them is motion, and motion can either be violent or it can be natural. Violent motion is stuff which goes against gravity, effectively. Gravity hasn't been invented yet. Natural motion is stuff that goes with gravity, not that's been invented yet. Descartes and Newton are still a couple of generations away still. So what Ghisliero prefers you to do in fencing, and he goes on and on about this when he's talking about parries, is if you point your sword at me, if I'm going to beat your sword, it's a lot better for me to beat it down than it is for me to beat it up, because I'll have the natural motion aiding the declination, is what he says. So if you have a dagger, what you're going to try, or if you have an offhand, you're going to try and suppress downwards while you do your attack. So what that naturally means is that your dagger, your offhand, starts above the opponent's sword. And I want everybody, where's Trey? Where's Trey? Is Trey here? Yep. Everybody look at Trey, and everybody make a big L with your left hand. Love you, Trey. And now, this can also be the quillion and the blade of your dagger. And I want you, when your opponent's projecting their sword towards you, as you're walking up, you get to the edge of measure. And as you lean forwards, I want you to square up with your torso. And then I want you to take your little pinchy grip, and I want you to wax off their sword. So you're leaning forwards, and you're coming in, down, and out. It's, for me, as a right-handed person, it's a clockwise motion. You can tell I never did Kung Fu. So, as you lean in, down and out with the sword. This has the advantage that if Sam's smart and he disengages, you have to wax off. There's only one way that it can go. If you start with your dagger in the middle, he could get you on either side, is the idea. So have a little play with that for 3 more minutes, okay? Start nice and far apart, so you have to waltz up to your friend. Shit, your 3 minutes are up. Does anybody have any questions at this stage? No? You've done this before, yep.
Is it important whether I'm doing a lunge or a passing step?
So for this, how you arrive at your polyclitus position in contrapose, he doesn't specify.
Okay, cool.
But from here, for this, he has a lunge. Cool. For this. And his reasoning is that a passing step is a lot of time. Although he loves Aristotle, although this is still one action, sorry Mosh, this is still one action, he says that music is the measure of time, and doing one of these big passing steps is 4 times as long as doing a little advance, twice as long as doing a lunge. Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed with Aristotle, he can fight and he knows music theory.
Yeah.
How
I know.
I have a question, but it's detailed. Do we have time?
Yeah, sure.
Can you grab a sword?
Yeah, I can. Should I grab a mask as well, or?
No,
Okay.
I'm having a massive issue, and you're going to tell me the answer.
Yeah.
Where the answer go.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm doing the pass.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it wrong. Because the issue is
Yeah.
that as I come in to make my lean, I'm making my lean as my right foot's falling. So my weight's here the moment I transfer it, and that's my natural step. So how I form the counter posture, I would have to have the weight on my back foot, which implies that I need to place my advance fully and then lean in the counter posture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's fine.
You think that's
Because the distance that you can travel depends on the location of your weight-bearing foot. So if you move the foot there, at the moment, I can't go further. Once my weight's shifted onto it, I can do a big passing step. Once I come to this, I can do a lunge. If I go here, yeah.
And there's no implication that I bring the left foot forward to make the counter posture?
Not for this one.
Is there an implication against?
Yeah. Do you know what's really good about this source? it has really good pictures. So, does that look familiar? Have we covered that before? That's the fencing problem. This is a bit that he steals from Dalagocci. This is his example of that first guard position on the edge of measure, backwards weighted, and this is his lunge forward with the right foot and his barring to get it. Later on, we go from the theory to the practice, and here's the same thing against some guy. You have your laser eyes looking through the L of your dagger at the opponent's sword down here, and then you lean forwards and you do your lunge. All one swift movement.
I'm leaning by putting weight on my foot.
Yeah.
I need to have my foot further back in the first instance so I can
Yeah. So you can do this to make it really difficult. Get to measure and lift up your front foot right up in the air. And now from here, lean forwards and go. Try that.
I know what I'm doing wrong now. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Who's bored of being a mannequin? Who wants to get some water? Water, and we'll come back for the next round. Everybody has 5 minutes. Woody, your workshop's tomorrow. Leave it out.
Let's talk about your workshop.
So I had a very good question during the break, which is, what about lefties? And my response was, what about them? Actually, this fencing book has a really good chapter on fencing a righty against a lefty. It is 2 pages of perfect advice, and if you don't believe me, ask Henry. It just works. But these plays that we're doing at the moment are for righty against righty or lefty against lefty. So can I have all of the sinister people in the room raise their hands right now? There's 4 of you. Perfect. Form pairs together, please. And then everybody who's been left without a dance partner, raise your hands. So, form partnerships. If it's a throuple, so be it. Okay, so we've been talking about if the opponent has their sword directly at you. But your opponent might not do that. Even though this is the best and the greatest according to Spanish fencers, who I will point out that they knew about Ghisliero. They referenced Ghisliero, the Destreza people. Some people haven't read Destreza. Some people have attended Woody's workshop and learnt one thing, which is a refused fourth. Some people have done Bolognese before, and so they know 6,000 guards. And Ghisliero's been exposed to this. He talks about it. I went on a little side quest the other week, because Ghisliero refers to what if your opponent is in... Who's seen Kingdom of Heaven? Yep. Who knows what Posta di Falcone is? Yep. Can anybody demonstrate Posta di Falcone for me? That's it in Kingdom of Heaven. It also appears in Vardi. It also appears in Vigiani, who says, don't bother with stupid names like this. It also appears in Anonimo Ricardiano, something like that, which is an anonymous manuscript, which I didn't know about until the other week because it uses this term. And there he talks about it, it's first. It's a point forward guard with your hand up. And that's what Ghisliero shows. Yeah, this is why named guards are silly. There's 1,001 different guards out there. The maximum reach of all of them should be this, because you can't beat that, or that. And all of those guards have the potential to end in this position. If you're going to be cutter, you're going to lose some range and it'll end up in that position, or that position. So what we're going to do now is I've given you one tool in your toolbox, which is you lean forwards and thrust. Actually, no. Complete change of plan. We're going to assume that your training partner is also a thinking human being, and they can also defend themselves. So they also have an offhand tray detector, Dagger. And so they're going to occupy the shortest line possible. And as the attack comes in, they're going to try and defend themselves as well. So play with that for 2 minutes quickly, okay? Okay. Did anybody still manage to land a touch with the other person parrying?
No. I hated it.
Who found it more difficult? Sweet. Cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to modify our attack pattern slightly to evade the opponent's dagger. And how we're going to do this, I'm going to pick on you, Chris. There's the person I want to deal with. I'm chilling out here. I lean forwards to deflect their point. And with this, I'm going to get it out the way so that they can't hit it. So I'm going to start with my sword up here. Try and reach my sword. Yeah, you're going to have a bad time. I'm going to try and keep it directly above them. And then as I lean and as I attack, I'm going to switch from my thumb being up to my thumb being down. I'm going to think about how I feel right now in this warmth. From thumb being up to thumb being down. So I come here, I lean forwards, I get rid of their sword. There, he got me. Try it.
Can you show us one more time?
Yep, sure. One more. I'm going to grab this. So Christopher, you go point on. If you walk up, you go to your counter pose. No, he parried it fair and square. But you're coming up, you're keeping your sword high, and you're leaning, and you're doing your lunge with a thrust. That's what he's doing. Have a play, see if it will work. Cool. Okay, everybody's attention, please. Everybody's attention, please. Who, as the attacker, as the nice contraposed person, managed to land a touch this time? A few more?
Maybe one.
Yeah. Who managed to get parried as the attacker? Yep. What Ghisliero says is that if you get parried, then you just try and redouble and try and continue your attack. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, what you do is you throw a massive backhand and run away and start again. It's a big smash. Yeah. But next problem is that our fencing partner isn't a nice mannequin in real fencing. They know all of their 6,000 Bolognese guards. They're going to go between them. But like I was saying earlier, any position that they're actually in has the potential to end up on the shortest direct line, and that's really what we're worried about. Because if their attack doesn't end up on the shortest direct line and you occupy the shortest direct line, you win. So what we're going to do now is we're going to square up against each other. Okay, yeah, you can stooge, thank you. Going to square up well away. And then what I want you to do is, from being on that shortest direct line, think, what would a cool way to hold a sword be? Yes, I'm going to mortar, no. This feels cool. This feels like I'm going to throw a big backhand. So now what I want you to do is, from nice and far away, walk up, adopt that counterpose position at the edge of measure, and have a go trying to hit me through it. Thank you for not making me lose an eye. Gonna put a mask on. I saw the way you looked at me, Ty. You were thinking about war. What would another position be? Give me a position. Sweet, yep, cool. Aha, I'm here. How does this go for my friend? Not well. Another position, Sam. Huh? Show me, I can't read books. Okay, right, sweet. All the way out here. Double, nearly. Have a play with it. Have a play from whatever different positions you can think of, trying that same technique, okay? Sweet. 15 minutes booked for righty against lefty fencing. Where is Nelson? There we go, there's Nelson.
That's me.
You were trying to parry with your hand earlier, and it was all feeling wrong? I'm sorry to hear that. I've been telling everybody lies. What he actually shows is that when you don't have a dagger and you're using your offhand, you do use a passing step to get that parry in. Apologies, everybody. I'm not the Pope, I am fallible.
Imagine reading the book.
Yeah. How did everybody find that exercise against different guards?
Good.
Interesting. Problem solving. So, pretty easy because I did this workshop last year. This is Ghisliero's preferred method. And where did my parrying dagger go? Where's a dagger? Sweet, thank you very much. And what Gizzy says is that, if I borrow your sword, Nelson, any position that their sword is, where it is at the moment, can be suppressed by your dagger, you do this thing. So if your sword's down below, under the line, sweet, same thing to do. If your dagger hand forwards, exactly the same thing. Yeah, nice blood blister. He then gives 2 ways in which this won't work. One of them is when the sword is in front, but it's not pointing at them, it's raised up. Because I can't get their sword with mine, with my dagger. And he has a solution to this, we'll get to it later. The other one is when the sword is raised up and pointing at you, but from the side.
From the other book.
It's also in this book.
I know.
Yeah, I know. And what he says is that the solution to this depends on where their sword's pointing. Because did you know that the ancient Greeks said that anything which is divided in half has 2 halves? He quotes it chapter and verse.
Finally.
Yeah. And so the idea is, I'm going to get out of all my mess that I've made earlier and get out into the fencing space. Sorry, Will. Yeah. Probably should have done that with my mask. The idea is that my body is composed of 2 halves, neatly divided by these buttons down the front. And whichever one of these my opponent is pointing their sword at, I don't move towards him. Yeah, so Nelson is going to have his sword up where I can't easily reach it with my dagger, so that would either be first or second, if you speak fencing language. And he's going to be pointing his sword at me. And whichever half he's pointing his sword towards, I don't shove into his sword. I know. You shove the other half in. Oh. So at the moment, he's pointing it at my belly button. Sweet, I can do my swizzle. If, point it at a shoulder. Now he's pointing it at that. It's more difficult for me to get. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk away from his sword. He's pointing at my left shoulder, so I'm going right. And as I'm doing that, I'm doing a little step to bring my body offline, and then I'm doing a lunge out to the side. Even in these terribly gusseted breeches, doing a little lunge. So we're here, I get here. I don't think I can capture his sword with my dagger. So I'm going to go out to the side. A little hop, skip, and a jump. Pointing at my shoulder. A little step to bring my body off, and then a lunge. And I'm keeping this side back.
And it's not an incortata. It's just a
He doesn't like a full incortata because it's violent and unnatural. Mechanically, it's an incortata. Equally, no, we'll do that. We'll practice that. So you find your fencing partner. One of you goes to first or to second, where they can't suppress your sword, and you point it at their dagger shoulder.
Are we just sticking to the inside, or are we also practicing to the outside?
That's next.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Katie, where is my pass?
And lots of people are still trying to bring their dagger into play. And what you need to remember is that the whole reason that you're not doing your default is because your dagger can't suppress them. So the first action, if you point at my left shoulder, first action is to take your body offline, and the second action is an incortata. And you're keeping this side away from your opponent as you thrust. Naturally here, as you throw that shoulder back, your dagger will come up and help to protect you. But you're not too worried about it. The key thing is, because your opponent's pointing at your left side, you're moving that target from them. Now there was a question. Nelson was jumping ahead. What if they point to the right? First of all, any other questions about this? Nope. Sweet. Yep.
What if they're in second and they're just tracking it?
And they just track? Yeah. At this point, you can still abort.
Right, okay.
You can run away. Throw a big backhand.
If they start extending to hit you, you just parry, right?
Yeah.
Is the issue not that the struggle with his guard, you don't want to reach out and touch it.
Yeah.
If they're trying to hit you, they're doing it for you, you can just take the dagger at that point, right?
Second answer is, if they start tracking you, so they bring their sword across to point at your right shoulder, boom. This is the next play anyway. So, next play. What if they're pointing at your right shoulder? Give me a guess. Anybody have any guesses as to what we do?
Right shoulder on the tip of their sword.
Yeah, boy. Boom! You've been watching my tournament footage, haven't you? Yeah. So long as that's not seen by the judges and you have to blow harder, mint.
Yell when you don't hit them.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll leave this to the comment section. We've got 35 minutes left. I want to show 2 more techniques and then stuff with lefties. So, if they're pointing at your right shoulder, as you advance, you get to your position, you think, I can't really suppress that. So you do a passing step out to the side. You go to first or second yourself, and you shank. Thank you very much. So they're pointing at your right shoulder, and it works 100% of the time, 90% of the time. But it works pretty well. Problem is, okay, so this is a totally different set of instructions to this. Well, that's fencing. Pick one, roll them dice. But the key thing is, you're walking up to the edge and measure. I guessed wrong. He was pointing at my left shoulder. I still managed to make a second parry in that tempo. Probably because Chris is being nice and not stabbing me in the eye. But we're fencing. We're rolling dice, right? We're trying to do the best things possible given the information that we have at the time. And the information is you walk up to the edge and measure. I can't suppress their sword with my dagger. Okay, which side's he pointing at? He's pointing at that side. Okay, passing step. Have a play.
Why you lunge like that now?
Sorry?
I've realized why you lunge the way you do.
Because my pants won't reach far enough?
Yeah, and it's the slight issues. No,
Okay, cool. Also possibly crippling knee damage.
No.
All right, everybody have a play with that. So this time the defender points their sword at the opponent's sword shoulder, okay? If they're pointing at your dagger shoulder, if they're pointing at the dagger shoulder, I'm pointing at your dagger shoulder. Yep. Boom. And then if I'm pointing at your sword shoulder, you don't want to advance that right-hand shoulder, so you're passing step. Yep, and suppress. And then you go to preem yourself and boom. Yep, sweet. Yeah. Cool, that's all good. We'll wrap it back up. Grab a partner, 5 minutes. Gucci, sweet as, cool. So, one problem that was encountered was by a left-handed person, but the problem was the height difference, not the left-handedness. It is a protected category in fencing. The problem that they were finding is that, yep, sweet, they could parry the opponent's sword, but then as they followed up with another passing step, they had so much distance to travel that their opponent could easily parry it. My suggestion was, after they make their parry, they do their pass, but a short little pass, and then they do a lunge. And what that does is that gives them a beat where they're in close, where they're controlling the opponent's weapon and theirs is free, so that they can decide whether to jab left or jab right or whatever they want to do. Make sense? Was it better?
Yeah.
Yes. It's good because I taught that to somebody in the SCA last week. There is a fourth, most secret guard attack method that there is. Because we talked about the ways that you can't suppress their sword, and the last one was, yeah. This is the least convincing part of Ghisliero. Because against somebody who has their sword in presence but angled above the center of your body, he switches everything up. He gets to the edge of distance, and he goes, I don't really like this. I'm going to take a step back. Brings the sword underneath their dagger arm. Then he does a little advance with the front foot as a little steal of measure. And then what Ghisliero does is he goes full send down the mid-center line. When you see people that are not experienced rapier fencers fencing rapier, especially in competition, they really don't want to do this Thibaut Moche nonsense. Because that requires skill. What they want to do is they want to have their sword back out of the way, where it can't be messed with, try and get hold of the opponent's sword with their dagger, and then just ram it home. And you will have some success with that, and then eventually you'll meet somebody who knows what they're doing, and they'll just shut you down. We're using that strategy, but under a very specific set of conditions. Because what Ghisliero says is, he has several plays against people who start with their sword refused, pulled back, where you can't get it. And what he says is that it's such a long tempo for them to come forwards and attack, that's ages for you to pin them in their sword shoulder, and there's nothing they can do about it. Which is why there's this whole song and dance first, to steal the measure and then be able to do it, and why we're only using it against somebody in a boring third position. We're not using it against somebody who's up here, because if I'm down here and he's up there, he can just jib-jab me over the top, and maybe I can try an afterblow like a chump, but I'm not going to win. And it's very, very similar if their sword's refused up here. You just incortata them. What's an incortata? An incortata is the thing that we were doing earlier. Because from here it's going to be such a long amount of time for me to do a big passing step and try and get them. That's all the time in the world that Nelson has to step out away from my sword and smash me, however he wants to. So what we've done is we've started, not quite from bare principles like we did last year, but we've started thinking of fencing in terms of what is my opponent doing? How are they holding their sword? What is the safest and most likely way for me to attack them, given the position that they're occupying, given what they could possibly do? What happens if you meet somebody who's super skillful and is playing with distance? Well, here's one dumb thing you can try. It's better than nothing. It's better than just being bamboozled. Any questions at this point? Which guards which? I can't remember. It's taken me a year to get that in my mind. The biggest weakness that I have found with this system is that he has quite different solutions for this and this. And that's a split-second decision that you make as you get to the edge of the measure, and suddenly they might swap their guard. If somebody's doing that, maybe they know how to fence. If somebody's doing that and you get to the edge of measure and they start doing sensible things, fortunately, there's other fencing systems we can try. Suddenly, Fabrice. But as an introductory rapier system, rapier and dagger system, I still quite like this one.
I have a question.
Yep.
Does King Gizzard
Yep.
mention, does he mention any flaw in this position? He mentions what's pernicious about it. Does he mention how you're taking advantage of some gap here?
With?
So, like, obviously here,
Yeah.
right, I have the advantage
Yeah.
to put it through.
Okay. Why against this does he do this? Because your sword is angled compared to the center line, that's giving you space in which you can put your dagger.
Yeah.
And because the only direct attack that you can do is downwards from there, that's given you the time to mess around. An interesting philosophical question is, what would a fencer do against their own system, right? And if Ghisliero's system is, I'm going to walk up to the edge of measure and do this, what would another fencer who's fencing Ghisliero do against somebody who walks up to the edge of measure and does this? Either they'll go underneath and stab, or possibly they would try that jump, incortata.
This one?
Yeah, and then incortata me. Boom.
But it could never happen because that would be a rift in space-time.
Yeah. All I'll say is that most of the book's about fortifications and what to do in armored combat. Actual fighting. And this is where I want to finish translating Gaiani to see if he has more answers. The other answer is simply, Capoferro was another fencing instructor from the same teacher. What does he have against those situations? I don't know. I haven't read Capoferro. I can't read.
Nobody has.
Sweet. Cool.
Maybe one thing.
He also has sections about sword and buckler. Who cares? He has advice for single sword and buckler, which is just like bullet points. Sword and rapier of bullet points of good advice. And he also has this chapter about lefty against righty. So we're going to work our way through that, because all of you can use it to beat Henry in competition. Okay. Can you do me a favor? Can you pretend to be left-handed? I know. Yeah. We are now fencing. This is pretty useless because of the fact that our dominant side shoulders are closer to each other. For me to bring the dagger into play, it has to come across my body. And if I'm doing that, I've probably already messed up. equally. Can you pass my mask from the back? Should be kicking around back there somewhere. Yep, sweet as. Cool. Do you want to grab yours on Nelson? Just one sec. Yeah, sweet, cool. Me too. Not today. Not today, Death. Not today. So, in most fencing, there's a concept of an outside and an inside. If I point my sword at you, this side here, with all my moves on, that's the inside. This side with my back, that's the outside. Make sense? When we're fencing each other lefty against righty, our insides are on the same side and our outsides are on the outside. And if I decide to just rush my friend up the inside, what they can do very easily is they can do one of those incortatas, step out and away from my sword. Other way, yeah, because you're a lefty, I know. That's why I made you do it. Sweet. It's very easy for them to do that. In fact, they don't even need to commit to the bit. They can just smash straight down and turn their shoulder out and do that. So when you're fencing against a lefty, you want your sword to be on the outside and you want them to attack down the middle. So Ghisliero's guard of this is a lefty's nightmare, or a righty's nightmare if you're lefty. So when we're fencing away, try and be on the outside. Sweet. What other advice does he have? He says that if you want, it's much better to be the second person doing the thing. Because when we're both here, if I go first, I'm giving my opponent the weak bit of my sword, and then even though I've got the outside, maybe they'll be fancy and they'll, no, yeah, you can do that, but even easier.
You said fancy.
Okay, maybe they can be simple and just turn their sword out and stab. Boom. So it's much better to be the person going second. This is true in longsword, this is true in saber.
Because there's afterblows.
No. Because if we're choppy boys, if we're chopsters, and I just, go on, no, be choppier. Yeah, there you go. You're an angry anteater, and I decide to chop first, and then you go. Boom.
That's choppy as hell.
I know, chopsters.
Yeah, but you had right away.
I missed. So if we go again, if you decide to be the attacker this time, you try and chop at me.
But my way.
My long arms mean that I'm safe. And also the fact that I'm going second, and also the fact that I'm coming from the outside. So it's super simple, like 3 bits of advice for fencing a left-hander that just work. Disgustingly, they work. Until you're so fixated on getting the outside line that you walk out of the ring. And then that penalty counts as an exchange, even though it shouldn't. But in those cases, you just get out-fenced, and that happens sometimes.
It happened to me.
First time for everything. Any questions at this point?
So you just never need to use your dagger if you're fencing left-hander?
Not unless you really stuff up, no. This is an extra life.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that you focus on fencing with this thing, and then if you mess it up and they do manage to get past your sword, you've always got a second chance to wax on or wax
Or
off.
if you do hit them, you can then hit them again with the dagger
Yeah.
before they try and afterblow you.
What Gizzy says is that this is the attacking thing, this is the defensive thing. Sometimes you do attack with the defender and defend with the attacker, but that's by accident. That shouldn't be on purpose. And in fact, when we were talking about potential solutions to somebody with their sword directly on, so if you go on to that, he says some people, their idea is to bash it out the way and then stab with the dagger. And he says, geniuses, perfect. You can also stab them with the dagger. Because if we're taking the swords out and coming in here, this is just a gunfight. This is, yeah. Why not? Why not?
I
Yeah. Any questions at this point otherwise? How do you do that spin?
That's the exercise.
Okay, so what you do is, earlier we were talking about a passing step against somebody who's pointed at your right shoulder. Go back to normal. Go back to normal.
You mean right hand?
Yes, sorry.
Slurring. Normal. How could you?
Sorry, as I said, third thing I said at the start, please forgive me, I do have brain damage. If they're pointing at your right shoulder, you come up to the edge of measure, you decide to do a fancy passing step and take it out of the way. You decide that this person really doesn't know what they're doing. I've done it once in 10 years, yes. Any other fancy tricks in Ghisliero? No. He starts talking about armored combat, which for him is always a foot tournament. So it's pages and pages about how to look graceful while you're handling your pike being given to you by your squire. And then the actual walking up to your friend and breaking a pike on their suit of armor, he doesn't care about, that's obvious. He talks about mounted combat. Apparently that's a copy and paste from Dalagotchi. He does say it's a collection of many nightly exercises. He does have like 16 pages comparing fencing to siegecraft. He's an engineer. He wants a job as an engineer. He's just showing that he knows his Aristotle. He knows his physics. He knows his principles. He knows what he's about. He's a soldier. Please give me a job. And it seems to have worked. He got a noble title out of it, out of being a soldier. People were asking me beforehand, nobody's asked me during this, why am I dressed in a very sweaty pantsuit?
Paying attention.
Yeah. The answer is that I wanted to look like the pretty pictures. Does this make any difference to how I fence? No. It doesn't. It makes me feel really warm. It's really inconvenient. Actually, they're pretty cheap. The main thing is lots of people playing in HEMA are like, the material objects matter. Okay, yeah, sure, that's a thing. I'm using a rapier which is 3 inches shorter than any book says. I wouldn't worry too much about the shoes. Worry about the fencing system. Worry about its context. Worry about the problems that it shows and the solutions that it gives. And then think about puffy pants.
So we can do Gizzy and Spez heavies?
Sorry?
So we can do Gizzy and Spez heavies?
You can. He shows a simple hilt. Why couldn't you use a mitten? The idea of the principles of this is how you approach an opponent that has a weapon can be applied across lots of weapons. When you're doing longsword, you can do an incultata. You can start calling it a shield however you want. Yes?
You told us to warn you when you started talking about something like brain damage.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We've got two minutes left. Tomorrow there are more workshops on Rapier. And it's very easy to dismiss Rapier because you didn't like watching Zorro as a kid, you didn't like the Three Musketeers, or you didn't like the Princess Bride. You feel this is an effect weapon or whatever. I'm not even going to get into that. All I'm going to say is that the surviving documents about rapier fencing are really good. I spent like 5 years looking at longsword texts.
Yeah, you did. My condolences.
Yeah.
Is that where the brain damage came from?
No, that was Sabre. Rapier texts have answers. And if you want to learn how to fence, then go to Nelson's workshop. And if you can't do that, try reading a rapier book. Try a good one. try one that was influential. Don't try Saviolo. And hopefully it'll have some answers, it'll have some problems, and you'll be able to work your way through from there. Thank you very much. Yeah. There's 5 minutes left of class time. Go fence until you get bored and enjoy. And then afterwards, when you're really hot and sweaty, let's go to Rivendell.